left for dead by settlers. She was found by an Apache scout, who claimed her as his bride. The desert night had teeth. Every breath of wind bit through Annabeth Carter's dress, pulling at her like a clawed hand. She lay face down in the dust, half conscious, her body a map of bruises and wounds. Her lips were cracked, her eyes swollen from sand and tears. Around her, the wagon ruts carved deep scars into the hardpan, leading westward to a horizon already empty. The settlers had left her there. She hadn't expected mercy. A young widow without a husband protection was always a liability. When their wagon train had been attacked 2 nights earlier by raiders that had come with fire and plasma rifles, they needed someone to blame for attracting bad luck. She fought back, insisted she was not cursed, but fear made people cruel. So they stripped her of food, water, and shoes and cast her out as a price for their own survival. She had walked as far as she could under the punishing sun. By the second day, her strength gave way. When she finally collapsed, the vultures began circling. And then he appeared. At first, she thought he was one of them, another raider with blood still on his hands. But no, the man who stepped from the ridgeline was different. Tall, lean, his face painted with copper dust and shadows. His hair, black as obsidian, fell to his shoulders, tied with a strip of leather. Across his back was slung not a plasma rifle, but a bow strung with luminous fiber that glowed faintly blue. His eyes, dark and steady, fixed on her with a strange mixture of curiosity and possession. He crouched beside her and pressed a hand against her neck, feeling for the thread of life. She flinched, but his touch was steady, grounding. "You are not dead," he said in accented English. "Not yet." Her vision blurred. "Please, water." He unhooked a canteen of strange alloy and tilted it to her lips. The water was sharp, almost metallic, but it slid down her throat like salvation. She coughed and gasped, but color returned faintly to her cheeks. "You are not of them anymore," he said, nodding toward the fading wagon tracks. "They cast you out. That makes you free." She didn't understand. Who are you?" His gaze lingered on her, unreadable. "Nantan Lycos," he said, "scout for the Apache resistance. You will walk, or you will die here. If you live, you are mine." The word struck her like lightning. She wanted to argue, to scream, to deny. But when he lifted her from the dust and carried her against his chest, the warmth of his body against the cold night, she felt something else stir inside her, something perilously close to hope. The middle, the war in the wastes. By dawn, Annabeth realized that Nantan was no ordinary scout. He was a ghost of 2 worlds, one of Earth and one of stars. The Apache had long resisted the settler expansion into their ancestral lands, but the battle was no longer fought only with rifles and horses. The corporations had come, promising opportunity, but bringing domination. Terraforming engines reshaped valleys, while orbital satellites tracked every movement across the frontier. Settlers followed in their wake, thinking themselves pioneers, but to the Apache they were invaders, no different from those who had come centuries before. Nantan belonged to a band that had learned to steal alien technology from the raiders and repurpose it for survival. His bow was strung with filament stripped from a crashed drone. His horse, a sleek black stallion with eyes that faintly glowed, had been enhanced with biomechanical implants that gave it endurance beyond flesh. Annabeth struggled to keep pace as he led her through ravines and dried riverbeds. At night, he built small fires masked from satellite scans by throwing up shimmering veils of tech scrap. He was cautious, deliberate. "You should have left me," she whispered one evening, her body still aching from days without food. He looked at her over the fire. "The desert decides who lives. You survived when you should have died. That means something." She shook her head. "I'm nothing. Just a widow with no one left. I don't even know why I keep going." His eyes narrowed. "Because you are stronger than you think. Those settlers who left you, they are weak. They cling together out of fear. But you walked alone, and still you live." There was no gentleness in his tone, but there was conviction. It made her believe, for the first time in days, that perhaps she was not as broken as she felt. As days bled into weeks, Annabeth learned fragments of Nantan's world. His people fought not just for land, but for survival against corporations that sought to erase their identity. Raids were common, retaliation brutal. Settlers often found themselves caught between sides, manipulated, abandoned. Yet in quiet moments, when the desert stars hung low and heavy, she saw another side to him. He spoke of spirits in the mountains, of dreams that guided warriors, of a prophecy that the land would one day heal itself if defended long enough. His voice softened when he told these stories, as though he carried not just weapons but centuries of memory. And though she tried to guard her heart, Annabeth found herself drawn closer. The conflict. The day came when survival demanded a choice. They were moving through the White Wastes, a region scarred by terraforming gone wrong, when Nanton scouts signaled danger. A corporate strike team had tracked them. 3 armor vehicles, bristling with plasma turrets. Nanton's people, hidden in the cliffs, prepared an ambush. Annabeth, still weak, was told to stay back. But she watched as the warriors loosed arrows strung with glowing energy, their weapons a fusion of ancient craft and alien salvage. Explosions rocked the canyon. Men screamed. She thought it would end quickly, but the corporations were relentless. Drones swarmed overhead, targeting heat signatures. In the chaos, one drone swept low, its sensors locking onto Annabeth. She froze as its gun charged. Before she could move, Nantan leapt between her and the machine. His bow fired, shattering the drone, but plasma bolts seared across his side. He fell to one knee, smoke rising from his wound. No! Annabeth screamed, rushing to him. She tore fabric from her dress, pressing it against the burn. He gritted his teeth but said nothing, his eyes fixed on her with intensity, even in pain. You should not care, he whispered hoarsely. You owe me nothing. She shook her head fiercely. You saved me. You gave me water, food, life. I will not let you die. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted. What had begun as survival, as possession, became something deeper. The Apache won the battle that day, driving the strike team back into the dunes. But for Annabeth, the real victory was holding Nanton's hand in the aftermath, realizing she was no longer simply surviving. She was choosing, the ending, a new beginning. Nanton's wounds healed slowly, but Annabeth stayed at his side. She learned to ride his horse, to draw the glowing bow, to master fires from satellites. The other warriors eyed her with suspicion at first, but as weeks turned into months, they saw her resilience. She worked, she fought, she endured. One evening, as the desert winds carried the scent of rain, Nantan stood before his people with Annabeth beside him. She was left to die, he told them, his voice carrying across the camp. But the desert chose her. She is no longer a settler. She has walked a long path, and now she walks with us. He turned to Annabeth, placing a carved pendant of bone and metal around her neck. By my word, she is mine. By her strength, she is free. Annabeth's breath caught. She looked at him, at the fire in his eyes, and felt her heart answer. She was no man's property, not anymore. But in Nanton's claim, there was no ownership, only recognition. He had seen her worth when others cast her aside. He had given her back to herself. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "Then I am yours." The people shouted their approval, voices echoing into the night. Far above, satellites traced their endless paths across the sky, blind to small fire below, blind to the bond forged in dust and blood. And in the arms of the Apache scout who had found her among the bones of the desert, Annabeth Carter no longer felt abandoned. She felt reborn.